Greetings, and welcome to Beatles Stuffology. We're two old friends sit around and talk BS, Beatles stuff, on a track-by-track basis, pretty much for the sake of it. My name is JG McQuarrie, and I'm here with my co-host, Andrew Deacon. Say hi, Andrew.
Well, hello. Aren't we looking fabulous today?
Always. We're always looking fabulous today. How are you doing?
Yeah, fine. Yeah, absolutely. We have seen the back of January, which is always the time of the year where life seems to pick up slightly, and there's even just a splash of colour in the garden. Ah, never have I sounded more middle-aged.
Or middle class.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's true.
As if I'm one to judge.
Because working class people only have black and white gardens.
That's always been my impression. I don't really know. I might be straying out of my area of expertise here. Right, let's.
Working class people are hard day's night. Middle class people are help.
That works disturbingly well.
What are we talking about today, JG?
Today we are not talking about class war, but instead are talking about Day Tripper.
Although in some ways it could be argued. Carry on.
No, let's not. So last episode, I should say, we talked about We Can Work It Out, and this episode we're talking about Day Tripper. Last episode, you made your case for We Can Work It Out being the song that you preferred. So I guess that means this week I have to make the case for Day Tripper being the song that I prefer. And I'm going to start with what is going to sort of tantamount to be waving the white flag, which is I actually probably do think that We Can Work It Out is a better song than Day Tripper, which is not a great position to be starting from, but I just prefer Day Tripper. I think if you really,
that's fine.
If you put together like any kind of cogent argument, I think in any meaningful critical sense, I think We Can Work It Out probably is a better song. But I prefer Day Tripper, and there isn't. I have some logic for that, but that's just how I feel.
I just say that there's nothing wrong with that at all. We have said, I know I have said, in lots of episodes that it's all about the emotional response that you have to a song, and that can come down to, as a couple of our correspondents have mentioned, when they first heard it and how they experienced it. And various factors like that. So it could be that it just to you feels like a better song. It's just as in the same way, there are lots of songs that are incredibly technically proficient and perfectly well written, but that just inspire no emotion in great swathes of the population. So that's I'm not talking about Beatles songs here. I'm talking about some really, really successful songs. Songs that you cannot argue are good. So, take That's Back for Good, for example. It is a really good, well-written song. I don't think there's any argument about that. However, the argument then comes down to whether or not people respond to it in a way that is carried along with the song, or whether they are opposed to it or not affected by it in some way. So yeah, absolutely. No, it's all about the emotional response. So did this song hit you in the feels?
It does hit me in the feels, as I believe younger people will say these days. Yes, but I think it certainly has some things in common with We Can Work It Out. Not least of which is how collaborative it is. It maybe not quite to the same extent, but it is a really good ensemble piece as well. There's a real feeling in this that everybody is pulling their weight, and the opening section of the song before the lyric kicks in really kind of emphasizes that fact. We start off with what is a killer riff played on guitar, then it's doubled on bass, then we get the tangerine, then we get the tambourine.
Ooh, hello.
Sorry, I've momentarily become David Tennant. Then we get the
that
tambourine.
Sounds a bit like something maybe from the Bonzo Dog Doodah band, wasn't it? The intro and the outro.
Oh, the intro, yeah, exactly.
On Tangerines,
Liz Truss.
Adolf Hitler.
Yeah, exactly. And then finally we get to the vocal. So everybody has their little moment to show off what it is they're bringing to the song. Layered really, really effectively. Again, really terrific production on this. Layered really effectively in, and then we kick into the main part of the song. It's just a really different way of getting to the song compared to We Can Work It Out, which just starts on that half beat and then in. But it's really effective for demonstrating what it is that everybody brings to it. And I think really everybody is at their the top of their game here. If you want to argue that the lyric here is less sophisticated than We Can Work It Out, I'm going to agree with you, because it's definitely not as sophisticated. We'll get into sort of multiple meanings and all the rest of it a bit later on. But it works for the nature of the song. This is a glorious, glorious Ringo song as well. Ringo is just amazing in this song. And although it's not something that I kind of often really want to talk about, the 2023 remixes of the Red and Blue album, like, really do Ringo some favors on this track as well. Like, his drumming is given a little bit more clarity, it's a little bit more space around it, so it's a little bit more audible in the mix, a little bit more sort of bottom on kind of McCartney's bass as well, and it really does help to clarify this song a little bit. I'm not a massive fan of kind of those remixes, but this is one that I think it really does just benefit from, not so much because it alters the song, but it just allows you to hear what's already there that little bit clearer, and that's not true for all of the remixes. And it just Ringo is just stunning in this song. I adore Ringo's work here.
So I would say mixed feelings. I mean, obviously this is way better than an awful lot of the album tracks that we've had so far. And it's certainly on a par with things like, I Feel Fine, for example. So, it's definitely the better end. But I think there's an interesting comparison in terms of how I react to it, in a sense that I think that We Can Work It Out is a much more cohesive product, if you like. It's something that you can imagine listening to on the radio, and it filling 2.5-3 minutes of your life, and you can listen to it reasonably closely, and it just sounds glorious all the way through. Day Tripper has a better structure. It has better harmonies going on. It's got
harmonies are really good. In this.
I think Lennon's singing on this is incredibly strong. I like the vocals. I think some of the individual moments from individual band members are absolutely fantastic. But there's something about the production that leaves me a little cold, and I think it's the dominance of the riff, and the fact that the riff is so goddamn repetitive, and just okay, right, we're going to go around, all right, okay, all right, yeah, and I think it's clever, it's good, it's catchy, it's fantastic, but it's incessant. And for some people, that will be a real positive. For me, it just feels like you got an idea and you're going to hammer that idea because you haven't really got that many other ideas.
Yeah, I think this is kind of probably where we slightly part company in this song, because I do really, that's what I like about it. I like that it builds on it, and that riff is over a single chord, which is an A chord, which is what the verses are basically. The riff drives it, but it's just a single chord before it gets to the Day Tripper bit, or chorus, as most people would say. And it's I really like that because it's doing a lot with the little, which is always that's one of the things I love, songs that do a lot with the little. So it is just one chord, and that riff just drives the whole song forward. But I like the fact also that once we get past the chorus, it just cuts back to it. The thing I liken it to is kind of like almost like arrows being fired off. Every time everything kind of cuts back and we just get that one riff again, it's like another arrow. It's like drawing back in the bow, and then when Ringo's drums come back in, the arrows kind of released. And I kind of love that. There's like 4 or 5 arrows that get fired in this song, and it's just, I love those moments where you just have the and then it's released again, and to me, it's just something really special. It hits me in the feels, man.
Which is interesting, because I just think George must be bored playing that over and over and over again. Can I have something else to do, please,
well,
John?
Though, That's the thing. Paul's playing it as well. It's a double. You know,
Yeah.
he's an octave lower in the bass, and I really love that sound as well. I really love the sound of that guitar and bass double playing the same riff. It just gets me every time.
I mean, I'm just being slightly, picky here. Again, it's that emotional response. It's not saying that it's not an amazing piece of work. Um, uh, uh, you know, After all, we can work it out is high on repetition. Effectively, you have two sections. One is repeated, I think, 3 times. The other one's repeated. But there's two repetitions. So you've got McCartney, then you've got Lennon and McCartney, then you've got McCartney back to him, and then you've got Lennon, and then you've got McCartney, and then it ends. So you could argue that there's a lot that just gets repeated in that, but it gets a little bit more room to breathe. Whereas this, the purpose is to have it driving underneath, and that's going to work for some, and it's going to not work for others. And I think the other thing, one of the reasons perhaps for saying that it's cold, goes back to what we were talking about. If I remember back in the Mists of Time, we were talking about how the harmonium helps to make it harmonious because it gives it a texture. There's a deliberately bare feel beneath the guitar riff throughout a lot of the song, and maybe if McCartney is doubling with the bass, that's part of the reason that there isn't as much that's there in opposition to it to, in my mind, make it sound more interesting. I just, maybe I just wanted a bit more, and maybe I just feel a bit let down by the boys at this stage. They're better than that.
Well, that's fair enough. That's an interesting comment as well in terms of better than that, because we are moving into that next phase of the Beatles' career. One of the things you mentioned back when we were talking about Day Tripper was that you felt this song was kind of looking backwards and looking backwards at where they came from, rather than We Can Work It Out, which seems more looking forward and more of a piece with what's going to happen in Rubber Soul.
I can't remember if I mentioned it during the recording, but it may have been when we were just talking amongst ourselves. But I think it is interesting to compare Day Tripper to Drive My Car, and although I knew Day Tripper, for however many years before I'd heard Rubber Soul, I prefer Drive My Car. I think Drive My Car is a much more inventive, clever, powerful song. I think the riff is stronger on that, and I think the lyrics are better, more humorous, more pointed on that, and it says a lot more as a complete musical composition than Day Tripper does. And of course, I should say in response, just as a reminder, not saying I don't like Day Tripper. I just think it's one of those Lennon singles that are really, really good, but kind of a bit similar. To me, I've written down here, all riff and no trousers.
Lovely.
Which again makes it sound like I'm being more critical than I actually am. So can I at this point just say, again, tambourine, brilliant work by the tambourine, but those drum fills that Ringo does at various stages throughout as well, they provide more drive for me than the guitar riff does.
Well, that's fair enough. I mean, like I said, Ringo's work in this song is just exemplary. I don't know if this is a song that he particularly gets called out for much in terms of the quality of his drumming, but he definitely should be. It's really, really amazing work from him, and just shows how inventive he can be. And the outro to this song, he could just keep everything dead regular. He doesn't need to show off. The song's done by that, and we're heading into a fade, but he doesn't. He's varying his patterns. He's got a kind of tum 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 at one point, which is just really gives an extra little push to it. Like, he's really pulling out all the stops here, and this is going to become a very familiar refrain as we get into Rubber Soul, and particularly Revolver. But he's just on top of his game here. He's unmatched, and he adds so much detail. And if we don't have a harmonium to give extra texture to this, then we do at the very least have Ringo doing his best to try to sort of push this through. He's just stellar in this song, and even during the builds in the instrumental, when we just have the sort of wordless vocal harmonies, and he's kind of hammering away in the background, and he's doing more build than anything else in the track is. It just sounds amazing.
It does. It's really good. Sorry, I was just having a moment where I was just trying to piece together. There's a section in this that reminds me of a previous Lennon single. I was just trying to work out which one it was. You sort of caught me mid mini light bulb moment, so I was ever so slightly distracted. Yeah, no, fair enough. I have been a frequent critic of Mr. Lennon's early vocals and that sort of, you know, nasal affectation that he sometimes has, but he's darn good on this. You know, there's something. I perhaps again, there's maybe it's because he believes in this song, and you know, so the story goes he wanted this to be the A side, and really pushed for it. That he knew that this was going to be considered for a single, and therefore really put in the work on producing a high quality vocal. But of course, then you hear someone like Otis Redding sing it, and you sort of think,
well,
right, okay. Here we go. There's a, but the fact that the song stands up to someone like Otis Redding singing it, I think is is quite important. It's strong enough for him to take it and to lift it and to give it a power that even Lennon's vocals weren't able to manage.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, Otis Redding, what can you say? Compared to something like, say, Ticket to Ride, this just has a stronger melody as well. Ticket to Ride's main kind of, melody, if that's the right word, through the chorus is basically just one note. Here, there's at least a bit of variety. It has a stronger melody. There is a chord change in there. It's just from just A to D back to A again. And that stronger melody, I think, makes it a much more compelling song for people who are trying to cover it. So when you have an artist with a voice like Otis Redding, you really have something that they can respond to. Whereas for all that, I adore Ticket to Ride, but it doesn't have as strong melody as Day Tripper does. And that, I think, gives the song more space for it to be interpreted. I mean, we were talking last week about We Can Work It Out, and I kind of meant to mention Stevie Wonder's version then. I think I kind of forgot, but it's a similar thing. Like, there's a really strong melody there, and McCartney is much more of a melodist than Lennon is, but it means the song can be wide open to different kinds of interpretations and still retain the core element of what makes that song great. That's both a sign of a great song and a great cover version. And I think Day Tripper fulfills that pretty admirably as well. It's not as developed a melody as somebody like McCartney would do, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't.
But that's why
work
it then works because of the riff as well. Ticket to Ride. I've got that on my brain now. We Can Work It Out doesn't need to be riff driven. Because the whole song is well constructed enough to be able to work through that. And please, you mentioned Ticket to Ride, because that's when a few minutes ago when I was having my distracted moment, that's the one I was trying to recall, because there is the point where you get that the harmonies are reaching a crescendo, going up and up and up, and then eventually it stops and we cut back in with the riff. To me, that's it's kind of a direct lift from Ticket to Ride. However, if you're going to steal from anyone, there's no harm in stealing from yourself.
Well, that's certainly true. And, even thematically, Ticket to Ride and Day Tripper have overlaps there as well. So, yeah, there's definitely some threads being pulled on, I think it'd be fair to say.
So before, as you mentioned, thematically, blah, 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 is it worth talking about the lyric? Can we add anything to the debate? Because lyrically, parts of this in my mind are you could say a little bit like when Holly Johnson was sitting down and writing the lyrics to Relax, think, what can we get away with, let's be a little bit naughty, cool, shall we?
Yeah, that's not terribly unfair. I mean, I don't know if I don't have some radical reinterpretation of the lyrics, which is suddenly going to throw them into a whole new light. I mean, there's kind of the sort of three takes, isn't there? There's the just take them on their face value. It's about going on a trip at the daytime. There's the
About getting the ferry across to the Isle of Wight or something,
exactly, exactly a ferry across the Mersey, if you will.
Well, actually, yeah, there is quite a bit in, I think, in McCartney's lyric book about going to holiday camps or something, and in relation to this song.
So you've got all that. You've got the oh, it's a criticism of kind of like weekend hippies or people who like the idea but just keep a regular 9 to 5, and you've got the idea that it's a criticism of McCartney, sort of not taking drugs at this point.
Well, not taking LSD.
Or not taking LSD.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Sorry, obviously he's taking plenty of other drugs.
Oh God, yeah. He's pharmaceutical as far as the eyes can see. Yeah.
He rattles.
Sue me, Paul. Sue me.
Yep. Or just write to us, Paul. That'd be fine as well. We'd be okay getting an email from Paul McCartney.
But
Anyway,
not an interview. I mean, what could you possibly ask him that he hasn't been asked a million times before?
Yeah,
we are the only Beatles podcast that does not want an interview with Paul McCartney. Take that, Paul.
Yeah, exactly. And he'd only trot out the same answers anyway, right? Well, what's our in? What's our in?
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't have anything particularly to add. I don't particularly think that it's the whole thing about it being a criticism of weekend hippies. That just feels like such a kind of after the fact reading of the thing. I don't really think that stands up to scrutiny.
Yeah.
I think like if you want to do kind of death of the author, I think it's a valid interpretation, but I don't think it's probably what was in mind. A criticism of McCartney, I'm not completely buying it. I mean, I think the correct interpretation is exactly what you said. Tee hee hee, what can we get away with? It's a bit schoolboy. That means there are naughty stuffs in there, and I'm happy to concede that Lennon probably did like drop in. Like I'm sure he was aware, like day tripper.
Oh, yeah.
Oh hee, that's a bit. Yeah. That could be a bit about drugs. But at the same time, I think that's as far as it goes.
She was a day tripper, a one-way ticket. Yeah, she's only got a one-way ticket. She's not just there for the day.
Well,
yeah, get out of that, John.
Yeah. What's your take on it?
There are a bunch of words that mostly sound like they're in keeping with the list. But this is something I bleat on about a lot. I'm not. I tend not to notice lyrics up to the point where I notice them, and it's things that are either just really kind of take me away or take me out of the song that really kind of matter to me. So, for example, with We Can Work Out, Time and Crime, it just doesn't work. And if it wasn't for the big teaser, tee hee hee, I wouldn't notice the lyrics in here. And actually, that's kind of a compliment. And I'm only mentioning the day tripper one-way ticket just to be a little bit picky, because actually it kind of works, because one-way ticket, he's using the vocabulary of trips. So it doesn't, even though it's not logical, it works.
Yeah, it's consistent.
Yeah. So we've got the whole kind of accepted vocabulary of the trip. So even when she was a day tripper, Sunday driver, yeah, okay, it's fine. It's fine. It works. It sounds perfectly okay. It's one of the you just don't question it until you look at it so closely that you end up questioning it. And that's kind of the point. So it's just slightly jarring that we have the big teaser, took me half the way there, tee hee hee, tried to please her, she only played one night stands. But listen to it in as a single, while you're doing other things or whatever it is, but on the radio, in the car, you're not necessarily going to sit there stroking your beard and going, let me just come across like a complete and utter cock now by really going into detail on exactly what Lennon meant here. It's
Well,
fine. It sounds
on that
sounds
subject.
fine. Yeah, okay. I see no beard stroking.
No, well, I do have a beard. I will stroke it.
You are
Just simply for
stroking
this.
now. Dear listener, he is stroking his beard.
It's less the interpretive thing, but it's more. I do think there is something very fundamentally English in the way that the language is used here. That language isn't something which is reaching for an international audience. It's not even reaching for a particularly British audience. I think it's very specifically English. That kind of the day tripper, one-way ticket, all of those kind of things. The vocabulary is very specifically English, and I think that's very much to the Strong's strength. It makes it distinctive, and I think that's something that we'll see a lot more of, not just from the Beatles, but particularly once we get into kind of the whole Carnaby Street scene, once the Kinks become more prominent, the Stones to a point as well, although the Stones are so invested in kind of R&B, it's maybe not quite as emphasized there, but yeah, it's a very English way of writing this, and I think that really speaks to the song. It gives it a distinctiveness, and it marks it out from I think a lot of other English or British contemporaries in the way that it uses the language. And I will now stop stroking my beard.
Apart from maybe the Small Faces, but
Well, yeah, okay, sure.
there's bands like that.
Yeah, but we're not quite
Kinks,
at that phase
perhaps,
yet.
as well. I wrote down a name when you started talking about that. I wrote down a name that is kind of synonymous with that sort of thing. And I just wonder, I'm just going to, before I explain to the listener, if you're still with us, and I have sort of crossed it out and I checked my spelling just to make sure. I'm going to see if you recognise why I might have put that name. Can you see?
Donald McGill?
Yeah. Do you recognise that name?
Off the top of my head, no.
Seaside Postcards.
Ah, okay, yeah, it's exactly that. It's exactly the language of Seaside
Bit
Postcards.
saucy, bit of innuendo.
Bit naughty, but cheeky, but not, you know.
Very much that English tradition, you racist Scotsman.
Yeah. That's me, baby.
Yeah, no, and yeah, that association hadn't quite occurred to me until you started talking about that, and I just suddenly thought there is a. But then there is that sort of element to Lennon's humour at the time as well, which is of course a product of the times and a product of both his seeming desire to both challenge the norms but also kind of conform to some of those norms as well. And we're back on talking about how attitudes to women, but let's not do that again.
No,
let's not do that again.
But I think it's interesting given how strongly they are influenced by American music and how strongly that has come through in the musical side of their writing. We have a lot lyrically, which isn't really at that stage now. Like, yeah, it's Seaside Postcards. It's we're a little early for Carry On movies, but we're in the same kind of vein. So yeah, it's interesting to see that kind of linguistic tradition be drawn on rather than the linguistic tradition of traditional rock and roll or rhythm and blues, which is where a lot of the musical influence comes from.
This song was in the live set, wasn't it, for a while as well, up until they stopped touring as well. So
yes.
Definitely more so than We Can Work It Out, I think, which is a little bit more complex. I think they did play We Can Work It Out live for a while, but
there was a few. Yeah, I think it got trotted out a few times, but
okay.
I think Day Tripper was played considerably more.
And you can see why, and it would fit in very nicely with some of the old rockers that they're playing, as well as I'm Down, which of course is not written so long ago as well. So it works. It fits in with that group of Lennon singles. It fits in with the kind of songs that they like, perhaps takes it into new areas. And I think in terms of harmonies, that's where it really goes into the new areas. And in particular, On the Line, Day Tripper itself, I love the different directions that Lennon and McCartney's voices go in, that almost sound, it's both competing and complementary, which is a really difficult trick to pull off. And sometimes when vocal harmonies are too harmonious, ironically, it just sort of reminds me of some of those male-female vocal groups of the 70s, like the Manhattan Transfer. Whereas this, because there's a little bit of an edge, a little bit of bite to it, it does make it much more effective.
Yeah, I completely agree. The harmonies are glorious in Day Tripper, and I think this is something we're going to have a lot of conversations about going forward, because it's something which is only going to get better and better. But again, it just shows how much time and effort is being put into these songs compared to what we had before, and how much attention is being paid to their production. We're so far away from just hitting record and doing your best. And if this doube-A side is a transition away from Help into Rubber Soul, which it is, because of course it's part of the Rubber Soul sessions, then it's also kind of a perfect springboard into that future.
You say that the harmonization gets better and better. What's your view on Because?
Oh, spoilers! I don't want to. Okay. I mean, I love Because.
Very well crafted, but blah blah blah. Okay, I was just wondering, because it gets better and better and better. And I'm sort of picturing Fonz on a motorbike with a tank with a shark in it. But that's for, let's see, what are we 2025 now? We're about 2029. I think we'll be talking about Abbey Road. When we had the dilemma, didn't we, with this, in terms of Day Tripper was recorded first, but we spoke about We Can Work It Out, because that was the A-side. God, when we get to Let It Be and Abbey Road, oh my word, frightening. Have you listened to any good or any bad cover versions? I've kind of eschewed the cover versions for these.
Well, I've got to be honest. The problem with both of these songs is that there's so many cover versions. I say both of these songs. I mean both of the songs on the doube-A side, that it's kind of hard to sort of narrow it down to something that might be interesting. I mean, yeah, there's the Jimi Hendrix version, which sounds like Jimi Hendrix. Yeah. It's great. Of course it is. That's fine. I quite like the Nancy Sinatra one. I'm not going to tell you it's brilliant, but I quite like it.
I listened to a Sacha Distel cover for reasons unknown, right. And I can't tell you now whether it was We Can Work It Out or Day Tripper, because it just sounded so dull. I really don't know what song it was I was listening to.
Not sure what you were expecting there.
It was one of them. Well, I was trying to go for ones that weren't so obvious. There was a Deep Purple one of and again I'm struggling. I think it was We Can Work It Out, but I guess one of the issues that I always tend to have is that some of the better Beatles songs are so distinctive and so synonymous with the Beatles that it's lots of people are far too respectful to do much with it, or alternatively you can only ever hear it as a copy of what the Beatles were doing, and you can still hear the Beatles rather than hear the artist. Or that they do something that's just so utterly bonkers that it doesn't work. And, there's some, Chaka Khan version. There's a Chaka Khan, Tom Jones version of We Can Work It Out that is just abysmal, because they're trying too hard. It's the band's fault, rather. They're playing too many notes in order to make it sound like it's a disco track.
It's busy.
It's just ridiculous. So I kind of zoned out a bit when it came to these covers, because I just think these songs are too good.
Yeah, it's not. I don't think either of those two songs are. I mean, I love the Stevie Wonder cover of We Can Work It Out. I think that's really phenomenal. I like the slightly different take on the We Can Work It Out line. I really, really love that. But most of the rest of them, it just kind of becomes a bit of a soup. There's a Yellow Magic Orchestra cover version of Day Tripper, which I was really excited for.
Starts really well.
Starts well, but it doesn't it doesn't really work, does it? Which is a shame. Like I like Yellow Magic Orchestra. I would very much like this to be a good thing that they had done, but it doesn't quite clear the bar. And yeah, the rest of it, like you said, it either becomes, far too close to the original, or it goes so far off piece they might as well have not bothered.
I have a memory. It might have now actually turned out to be a false memory of my parents having a 7-inch of an artist who, in my mind, it's something like the Four Tops, but I know now from Dr. Google that it's not the Four Tops. And on one side, I think it might be the B side, there is We Can Work It Out. And I remember it being, my memory is that it was really kind of funky and fantastic and wonderful. And they're not the kind of people that would have Stevie Wonder records. So I'm pretty sure it's not Stevie Wonder. But I can't find any trace of this.
Right.
The closest, definitely not the Four Tops. And the version that I heard as a kid is definitely not the Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons version. I did check, but
Right number, wrong season.
but then maybe that's one of the reasons why I'm a little bit more predisposed to that, because I had a positive experience. Talking about earlier about emotional responses, that there was a positive emotional response, and there is a reminder of, it's the closest that my parents came to having a Beatles record, for example. So if I wanted to listen to a Beatles record at home, that would be it. My dad's mum had Double Fantasy, but no Beatles records. It was really, really weird. So yeah, there you go. Not really related to Day Tripper, but if anyone's still listening at this stage, you there's a little nugget for you.
Yeah, we're proud of you. Good. Anything else you want to say about Day Tripper?
7.
That'll do me just nicely, and also provides a pleasing symmetry, because I am going to give it 8. So yeah, lovely, good. We can probably tie ourselves off there. You can really get a hold of us if you'd like to, and you're still listening. You can contact us by email. We are BeatlesStuffology@gmail.com. We're on what's ever left of Twitter @Beatles_ology, and we're also on Instagram @BeatlesStuffology. You can also find my blog at www.jgmcquarrie.scot. Please like, rate, and review us on whatever podcatcher you're using, so that people can find the show. Next episode, it's time to start Rubber Soul, and that means we're going to be talking about Drive My Car. And as always, we hope you're going to join us for it. But until then, keep listening.